Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, and this is for you guitar and bass players out there that are running a stereo setup or more than one amplifier. Have you ever run into an issue where you have one amplifier, it sounds great by itself, and then you connect a second amplifier to all of your pedals and your instrument, and all of a sudden you get this nasty ground loop buzz? Well, I'm going to show you how to diagnose it and also how to fix it. Well, first, what does a ground loop sound like? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little instrument cord, plug it into my send, and then I want to use that send to slave the second amplifier. You hear that little bit of buzzing in the background? If I take it out, it goes away. That is called a ground loop. It's basically circulating ground current on the earth ground lug of your power here. And I do have these amplifiers connected to the same power strip, which is ideally what you would want to do. Now, I've also used the dreaded cheater plug, temporarily of course, to demonstrate what happens when you lift the earth ground from one of your amplifiers. And all I have here is I'm just going to disconnect this wire. See how it goes away? Connect it again. It's back. And disconnect it again. So I've disconnected the earth ground on this amplifier. Now there's no more ground loop, but you've now created an unsafe condition. Everything, if this were to short circuit or this were to ground fault, for example, that current has got to go through somewhere. It's not going to go through this very thin instrument wire, which is currently how it's being grounded, but you, through your strings, through your bridge, through your instrument cables, you become the ground. And if this were to ever short out, it's going to go through you before it goes through the amplifier. That's the main idea with the earthing lug of your power cord there. You don't want to disconnect it. So if we leave this connected, we have that dreaded ground loop. How do we get rid of it safely without compromising the safety earth ground? So we have this ground loop. How do we fix it? Well, we're going to fix it on how we connect the two amplifiers together. This instrument cable is completing the loop and we want to break it, but we want to do it here, not at the safety earth pin of your power cord. And what we're going to use today is a device that I picked up just recently, and it's called Buzz Off from Rolls. Rolls is a company based over in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am not being sponsored by these guys in any way, although I did talk to Alex, one of their engineers, to get some clarification on a few things, and he was really, really helpful. Basically, this device has two transformers inside. You can actually see the schematic here, and what we're going to do is we're going to connect the first amplifier to the input here. It's then got the two transformers. It's a 2-channel. And then you're going to see that a transformer will galvanically isolate and break the loop. You can see here on the output that this arrow right here means that the outputs are earthed, but the inputs are not. They're floating. And depending on what your application may be, the good thing about transformers is that they work both ways. If you needed chassis earth on your input, for example, these outputs can become an input. You can actually flip this around if you really wanted to. I liked this particular one because it's got a bunch of different connectors. You have tip ring sleeve, you have RCA, and then you also have 3.5 millimeters. So this is going to be a very helpful device if you're hunting for any kind of ground loops. So what we're going to do, remove that, and then we're going to connect this input to the output of the first amplifier, and then connect the output to the second amplifier, and that should take care of our ground loop. Well, my cords are a little short, but here is the proof of concept. You hear the white noise of the amplifier, because I actually have the gain cranked all the way up. But now if it was back at normal, no more ground loop. And now we can run these amplifiers in stereo using the same instrument or the same setup, and you won't get any ground loop hum coming from either of them. And just for further proof of concept that a device like this works, I'm going to go an extreme example here. So we have our pure sine wave power inverter here, and the battery is the earth ground in this case. So I've run the negative terminal of the battery back to the same power strip for the first amplifier that's plugged in, and we are not using the cheater plug here. So we are basically earthing both amplifiers. However, the power source is separate from the first amplifier. So this is being run by the inverter, this is being run by utility. And when we connect the two amplifiers together, because of the shared earth ground, this is if you had a circuit that had a lot of other things going on, like you had the PA system. This sound's going to get progressively worse. And especially if the circuit is, say, on the other side of your venue, for example, if you're running a 50-foot cord or a 100-foot cord, this is what is likely going to wind up happening to you. And sometimes during a gigs, for example, one outlet may not be able to power two amplifiers. And in that scenario, you would definitely run into this kind of issue. And again, when we go and we disconnect the earth ground from one of them, that buzzing goes away. But obviously we can't leave it that way. So now what we're going to do is go right back to the setup and we'll connect this up. Well, guys, I'm going to end the video here. If there's any questions or comments, please leave one down below. This is just one of many devices. This is, again, the Rolls HE18, but ART Technologies makes them, Jensen, E-Tech. There's a lot of different devices. What we're demonstrating here is transformer galvanic isolation, it's called. So it means that there's no direct electrical connection on the instrument line here between the two amplifiers, and that's what allows you to break that ground loop and there's no hum. One final note when it comes to transformers in general, there is a phenomenon called insertion loss, meaning that the signal going to the input of the transformer, some of that signal is going to be lost because transformers are not 100% efficient, and the signal coming out of here is going to be slightly weaker than what's going into the transformer. That is normal. Sometimes the companies will actually say what the insertion loss, and they'll measure it either in dB or they'll measure it in millivolts, for example, or voltage, depending on what the metric is. It's typically dB, decibels, and you might find that there's a little bit less, maybe 1 to 2 dB, sometimes even as much as 3 dB. All that you need to be aware of is that when you are using a setup like this, you just may have to turn the gain up on the second amplifier a little bit to compensate so that both amplifiers are equal in volume. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Till the next video.